It's 8:27-ish. You know what that means. Welcome to Grolix Nights, the Grolix Podcast live show. This is Randy.
I'm Melanie.
And this is Jesse.
How's it going, everybody? Yeah, I just threw that random little bit at the beginning in. Like, my mouth is spouting. I don't know what to do. Savannah just says late.
You know what that means. We're late and Savannah's going to call us on it.
Maybe that's why I felt the need to. We're right on time. Drive me crazy. Well, we are consistently late, which means we're right on time.
Isn't that a fine young cannibal song? Drive me crazy.
Right.
Because I'm old.
Hey, Claire, what's going on? Got the whole fam here, huh? Tonight, here's what's on the agenda. I have one news story because we consistently go long, and then we talk about going long on the show, which makes the show go longer. That's not good podcasting. So we have one news story, and otherwise we're going to talk primarily about a movie that came out a while ago. New Mutants. Why? Because the movie was delayed so many times, you can only review it in a delayed fashion on our delayed live stream.
And because you can watch it now on HBO Max.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Which made it way easier for us.
Right.
Right.
And Mortal Kombat doesn't come out till tomorrow. So otherwise we'd be talking about that.
Yeah.
I do have a Mortal Kombat thing to talk about, though. So there's also that in our recent watches or whatever. Savannah says she watched Aliens. Not the first, but the second. Yeah, Aliens. Plural.
Yeah.
That's the action. A lot of people really like that one.
I really like that one.
And I feel like since it's action-y, maybe it's a little bit more rewatchable.
You know what it is, I think? The whole thing about that movie that gets me is that stupid little beep beep motion detector thing that they have.
Right.
It starts going faster and faster, and I'm like, that's what it does to me.
Well, it's got a cat and a child, so of course,
Oh yeah.
it's the rule of the internet or YouTube that's going to be more popular.
Yeah.
I always kind of like the first one better, but it is
much
different pace.
Out of the whole saga, for me, it's the first one because it is like a horror movie.
Man,
I remember being so scared.
I don't know why they're at some point just became eternally linked, but Alien and Predator, such cool movie monsters with such kind of crap franchises.
Yeah.
I would almost argue, though, that any movie, no matter how good it is, if you continue it for, 5 or 12, extra movies, they're all going to turn to crap. It's impossible not to.
Savannah says Bill Paxton sucked. That's sacrilege. I know what you're talking about, though. He's cheesy. Yeah.
Game over, man.
But it's also iconic because, yeah, exactly. Yeah. She said, also, but the Hispanic woman was a bad chick. Fun fact, not Hispanic. It's a little bit of brown face going on there.
Oh, my. Well, that, you know what brown face does? Sucks.
Right. It's interesting. Nobody really talks about that. I mean, whatever. I guess I won't get into it. She seems like a friend of, what's the director guy? Cameron. James Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
I almost said Kirk Cameron for some reason. I'm like, that's not the guy.
Oh boy. He gets left behind.
It had to be something, right? It was that or
real growing pains, that guy.
So. But she is the mom in T2, the mom of, the foster mom, I should say. Not not the actual whatever. But
not the mama.
Not the mama. Dinosaurs.
Yeah, weird deep cut there.
It really is. People do still once in a great while talk about dinosaurs, though, which makes me happy. I've never bothered to revisit it. I worry it's gonna not be good. But I had fond memories of dinosaurs. Kirk Cameron is DJ from Full House, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Candace Cameron. Yeah.
oh,
That's
okay.
bizarre that I actually remember her by name.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Hey, real quick, let's do a little bit of news.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's react at the news. We're going to start it off early with reacting at the news. And I only have one story just because it caught my eye. But otherwise, I wasn't going to do news tonight. But it's talking about our boy,
Oh boy.
Mike Flanagan. Who,
You thought it was Snyder. He's not our boy.
No.
hey, Dustin. Dustin says he's stuck at work late tonight.
That
But we're
sucks.
keeping him company. Hey, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Making that money and listen to some Grolix. If you can do both at the same time, that's not too bad.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Paul says no news is good news. That's right. No hashtag you know what watch. Mike Flanagan, who is a horror director. If you've listened to our show, we mention him at least every other episode, it seems like. Maybe if, know what? I'm not even going to say it. Listen, the dude works, okay? We've got reason to mention him. Puts out a lot of content, but he's consistent. So he is to direct with Intrepid Pictures to produce the season of Passage. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble spitting things out right tonight. The season of Passage, which will be a movie based on a Christopher Pike book of the same title. Christopher Pike, that's a name that I haven't heard for a long time.
Yeah. Speaking of deep cuts.
So yeah, anyway, Universal basically has the rights. They're going, and it's going to be produced by Intrepid Pictures. Not that anybody cares, but this is coming from Deadline.com, and they are very thorough, apparently. Based on the 1993 Christopher Pike novel, The Season of Passage, a science fiction horror novel set on Mars, which is quite a departure for him, but also kind of not, I'm guessing. Because he does a lot of sci-fi, and arguably, or I mean a lot of horror, sorry, and arguably Dr. Sleep was horror, but also kind of dark fantasy a little bit.
Yeah, I would say dark fantasy is a good description of a lot of the stuff of his that I've seen.
Right, but like Mars doing a straight up sci-fi setting, that's definitely different for him.
Is it a space western? Because Mars should always be space westerns.
You're right. If it's not, it's gonna fail. I'm sorry. Paul says, I thought Taika Waititi was your man.
First try, dude. Wow.
I can't say regular words, but I can say Taika Waititi's name tonight.
Yeah.
He's listen. There's enough room in our lives for more than one man.
Call us.
Taika. Mike Flanagan, call us. Okay, yeah, anyway, whatever. I don't know a whole... I guess, do you guys want to know a little bit more about it?
Sure.
He's co-writing it with James Flanagan. And plot details are being...
Not related at all, right?
Right. Coincidental. No, I'm guessing they
Wow.
are probably related. The book apparently centers around a celebrity who was involved in a manned expedition to Mars. The whole world admired and respected her, but Lauren, the character, knew fear. Inside, voices entreating her to love them. Outside, the mystery of the missing group that had gone before her. Wait, what?
Sounds Marsy.
The dead group. Okay, the mystery of the... it almost feels like they pulled the book description off the back of the book, right? But Lauren knew fear. Inside, voices entreating her to love them. Outside, the mystery of the missing group that had gone before her. The dead group. But were they simply dead? Or something else? Like, that's how the article's
It
written.
does. That's
You know
just
what
the dust jacket. You're not fooling anyone.
Right.
You know what automatically pops in my head though is Futurama, where they have to go and get the microchips from like the Queen Hive, where the last crew was eaten
Right.
by the like alien Queen Wasp thing.
What if it's really? Well, I guess the book would have came first.
Hmm.
What if it's just like a roundabout live action Futurama?
If it was actual Futurama, that'd be great. But just one episode, psh.
Cool. All right. Anyway, I was just reading more. Again, that was from Deadline.com. We'll have a link to the article if you want want to look at it in a coherent fashion.
The important thing here is that Mike Flanagan is making movies because he should always be making movies.
He is, or will this happen before or after the entire series of TV that he wrote and directed himself, despite saying he'd never do that again, hits Netflix, Midnight Mass? Because he shot that during quarantine when everybody else is like, some of the movies are going to go back to work, and they were shooting not the whole time, they took a break, but they were shooting during that. So like, he just doesn't stop, and we won't let him. He knows if you stop filming, he dies. That's his curse.
He's like the movie director equivalent of a shark.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Don't mess with him.
Well, hey, you guys watch anything interesting other than
our main subject tonight?
Right.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, usually Melanie and I watch a bunch of stuff together. What have we even been watching?
I don't know.
Because I feel like we haven't.
We haven't. We've been working really hard.
We have been working. Yeah, but we try not to do that too much on the weekend. I guess we do still.
Yeah.
We've been watching something, but I can't remember what it was. And apparently I'm not going to. So,
Jesse?
I mean, the only thing I watch anymore is like Disney Plus shows, apparently. So, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But the new one comes out tomorrow, so yeah.
Oh, Savannah asked Resident Alien. We hit the free limit on Peacock, so we haven't been watching that. I know somebody else who actually, because of that show, has a Peacock subscription now, so maybe I'll talk to her about getting.
I need to watch that while my Peacock subscription is still very cheap.
It's really good.
Yeah, I like the first episode. Dustin mentions in the chat, he mentions the Q documentary, which I did start that, but I think we only got 2 episodes in, and it's mind bendy. Man, the stuff that these people just believe, just wholesale believe.
Oh, I do remember one thing we started watching again because there are new episodes on HBO Max, Primal, which is a series that Melanie and I had watched before. They'd done like half of a season and then took a kind of extended break. But that is the animated show by the
Jendi I'm not gonna get the last name right.
Yeah,
the hard one.
The Samurai Jack. Powerpuff
Tartarovsky, is that right?
I
should have it in front of me before I even attempt it.
The Powerpuff Girls and Samurai Jack guy. He's amazing.
And the original Clone Wars.
He's great. It's an animated series by him that's fairly newish. Like I said, we'd watched half the season till like everything that was there, and then they took quite a break before finishing the rest of the season, and apparently the rest of the season's now out on HBO Max. I think it might run on Adult Swim. I don't know. But it's about a caveman and a dinosaur. There's no talking, and it is amazing. It's so good, yet at the same time, it punches you in the heart every episode. Somehow they figure out how. It's like his talent for directing animation in a way that nobody else is doing, to where it's action. What was the episode we just watched, Melanie? It was about, basically, it wasn't quite zombies, but basically zombie infection dinosaurs.
Mhm.
So our characters are dealing with that, like running from this infected big old dinosaur. So we're like, whoa, zombie dinosaurs. Yet at the same time, they managed to make it kind of heart-wrenching.
It was heart-wrenching. Yeah.
It's always heart-wrenching.
Not always, but a lot.
It's always heart-wrenching. And there's never any, it's just a caveman and animals. So there's like no talking in animation, and it's awesome and heart-wrenching, and that is talent.
Yeah, I mean, I know they make noises and things, but it's really kind of that thing where it's like a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I know there's more than one picture, but it conveys so much without saying anything. You know what I mean? And that's beautiful to me.
Well, and if you think about it, there were the occasional Powerpuff Girls that would do this, but Samurai Jack was all about it. Tone and atmosphere, and he would just approach. This is definitely not a kid's cartoon. It's super violent at times, but he would approach like half-hour animated shows in such a cinematic, and like he'd borrow the tone from samurai movies where it's not just action, action, action. It's so much slow build-up and just meditating, letting tension rise, and then there will be action, action, action. And I don't know, it's so good. I can't recommend it enough. Primal. Watch it. It's amazing. It'll make you sad and then be like, dinosaurs are cool.
Yeah.
They are cool. Yeah.
Right. And it's for the most part, like, of course, it's a caveman and dinosaur, right? So we're talking fantasy land. It's not feather dinosaurs. It's our old school fake dinosaurs. So, but those look cooler.
It is interesting that we brought up this because in the chat, Dustin mentions that there's going to be a live action Powerpuff Girls, and they announced some of the casting, and I think there was even set photos and whatnot.
I don't know these people by name offhand.
Chloe Bennett was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She was Quake.
Okay.
So,
I think
or the main character, Sky.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the others as much.
Dove Cameron. Yeah, I don't know.
I'd have to IMDb them to know what they were in.
Well,
Live action Powerpuff Girls.
So speaking of the opposite of something that conveys a lot in a short period of time with just images, let's talk about the New Mutants.
You're ready. You're ready to dive into this thing.
Okay, yeah. Hold on. I had other things.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That I watched.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, I believe it's tomorrow. Mortal Kombat will be up on the new Mortal Kombat movie. Will be up on HBO Max, and I'm excited because the trailer looks good enough to set us up for an inevitable letdown. But maybe, who knows? Maybe it'll be good.
I mean, it is a Mortal Kombat movie, so
right. Without Christopher Lambert, and for me, that's a con. Okay. We watched Dead Meat YouTube channel. They do kill count, mostly horror movies. But he did Mortal Kombat because everybody's got to get the Mortal Kombat in the SEO,
Right.
The dude hated Christopher Lambert in that movie, and I get it. Like he's not good. But I'm like,
no,
he's Mortal Kombat. Yeah. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's in, and retroactively, when I was a kid, I probably hated him, their version of Raiden 2, but now I kind of love it. That's like the high point of the movie for me. So it was just
that, and there's Shang Tsung was pretty awesome too. Like he was awesome.
The most recent Mortal Kombat game, there's the last couple of Mortal Kombat games, they've done a lot of time travel trickery, but they have older Shang Tsung. And it is voiced and likeness of that guy who played Shang Tsung in the 90s Mortal Kombat movie.
That's pretty rad.
Now, so
it's
cool. Totally fitting.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. What? The movie theaters are to blame, aren't they? Dustin says no, they pushed it back a week. Next Friday for Mortal Kombat. Well, maybe I don't want to talk about this anymore now.
They're exposing the business.
Yeah, well, I watched a thing.
Now he doesn't even want to talk about it.
I watched Mortal Kombat Legends: Scorpion's Revenge, which was a 2020, so fairly recent animated film.
Oh.
And man, it's a movie, kind of.
Oh, no.
Okay, so I'll lead with what I gave it. I gave it 2.5 stars. I liked it, but because it did a lot of stuff right, it looked pretty cool. It's kind of like DC stuff where it doesn't have an anime look to it, but when it comes to the action, it's very much. Dustin says, "I low key loved Annihilation." You're like the only one on Earth.
I mean, I watch it.
I remember being so. Okay, yeah, it was just so bad. It was fun like snakes on a plane. That is true, and
Yeah.
I feel like I have heard that opinion that people. More and more, I've heard people like it because it's so bad, and I get that. I remember, I was to use terminology you would. I was a mark for all things Mortal Kombat when I was a kid. I was slightly disappointed by, but still loved the first Mortal Kombat movie. I went and seen it in the theater. I hated the sequel. I hated Annihilation so bad because I was excited for it. I was pumped,
Right.
and it's a train wreck. So
It really is.
I was so disappointed.
They did try to cram a lot of characters in there. I'll give them that, I
And
guess.
it's just like, it's so funny because it looks so much cheaper than the first one, but it had a way bigger budget.
Oh, yeah.
And
It was all the new characters they tried to cram into that thing
Right.
because they didn't spend very much on the effects. Didn't feel like it.
But
Reptile from the first movie looked more realistic than some of the stuff they did.
right. And I was always like, why did they make him actually a reptile? Why did he turn into a human? The
Right.
first movie's got problems. I'm not saying it's an amazing masterpiece of any kind. Okay, but anyway, speaking of the first movie, if you'd like to watch basically that again in animated form with a lot of violence, Mortal Kombat Legends: Scorpion's Revenge. Okay, so
Wait, what? But Scorpion didn't even talk in the first movie. How is that possible?
Oh well, that is a flaw of the first movie for sure. Not that he needs to talk, but like Scorpion.
Did he at least have like a spear that's actually an animal that lives in his hand?
I suspect. Yeah, no. I mean, so this is basically. It follows very closely the first movie in a way. It's very much that setup, except it adds this entire subplot, which the title might lead you to assume Scorpion has a bigger role. It adds an entire subplot about Scorpion, his backstory. He's kind of the main character. At a certain point, it switches over to not even Liu Kang. I mean, he's there, but it's almost. We open with Scorpion. We get a bunch of stuff with him. Makes him super cool because Scorpion's the coolest. Everybody knows it. And and at a certain point, it switches over to like the MK1 default kind of heroes. But I feel like Johnny Cage and Sonya get more focused than Liu Kang. Their side of the story is pretty much just Mortal Kombat 1, the movie. Scorpions is interesting. It's not bad. It's not worth going through the whole details. We're basically, I feel like, gonna see it again in a week, in live action form. He's a revenge demon, really.
Right.
Revenge zombie.
Does it say, is his subplot a sub hero or a sub zero?
More like absolute zero.
Oh, boy.
That was a line from the first movie.
Oh.
It was not a good one then. It's not good now. But okay, I mainly want to get to my critiques of this movie. If you were like a '90s kid or whatever, '90s teen, and you loved Mortal Kombat, and you're kind of like, man, Mortal Kombat, how could they never do the violence, do the gore? It's Mortal Kombat. This is for you. But also, like, you at your age now, but if you were mentally like 8. And that's my problem, because this feels like it looks nice. Like I said earlier, it doesn't have an anime look to the animation, but like the fight style has an anime look. Yeah, I feel like the shows have kind of adopted that, the way the camera moves and just the little animation techniques. So it's super dynamic in that respect. The fights are good. The violence and the gore is overboard. It's overboard. I feel like their big thing was like, okay, Mortal Kombat, but we don't have to worry about ratings. And they're like, okay, so we should do some fatalities. They're like, no, just do all the violence. Just do it all the time.
Put it on extra blood mode.
Right. So there's, on the one hand, I appreciate that the violence is there and it's animated, so it's not really it's not disturbing. But on the other hand, there's times when it's like, this doesn't need to be there. Like, it's not necessary.
Right.
It's there just to be there. But it is so over the top in its violence sometimes. Scorpion goes wild right in the opening, and just there's chunks and parts flying everywhere. It's insane.
Does it have Ed Boon? Paul wants to know.
Does it have a guy that pops up at the bottom? No, and I can't remember specifically, but I almost guarantee there's a Toasty joke. Dustin said it right there, Toasty. There's always a Toasty joke. I guarantee there will be a Toasty joke in the new one. You can't not do the Toasty joke. Mm-hmm. Dustin can't stop thinking about the look on Goro's face when Johnny punches him in the D in the first movie. Yeah. Who does Johnny... I feel like the joke in this is Johnny gets punched or kicked in the D a couple times himself. And that's their play on it.
Oh, no. We'll have the tables have turned, Johnny.
Speaking of Johnny, here's where this movie, this lost a lot of stars, and why I say it's meant for it feels like a super hyper violent Saturday morning cartoon. The mentality of Johnny Cage, the character, like, they do exactly like in the first movie, where he doesn't know he's going for this thing. He thinks he's going for an acting gig. And they carry that joke of him not realizing that it's not real, that he's not in a movie set despite not seeing a single camera at any point, so late into the thing where he's like fighting, Baraka jobbers, I can't remember the race of what their name is offhand, but like he
the
basically
Mutants,
had
right?
to explode half of the castle before he's like, I don't think this is a movie. And it's like, dude, that's so stupid. Like, they tried to carry it so long that it
you know what I want now, though? You know how like we've gotten like the aged up Shang Tsung and whatnot. I want Johnny Cage played by Nicolas Cage way in the future, and he's basically senile and he thinks everything's a movie, and he's just like,
It just keeps getting into fights.
Where's the catering?
Where's the catering? This is the part where you fall over. So the stuff with Johnny Cage was Dustin, man, there with
coming in with the facts.
He's a Mortal Kombat broham. I liked it a lot. The writing was not great. The story was pretty decent. I mean, it pretty much relied on what was there. It's basically Mortal Kombat 1 with some elements taken from later Mortal Kombats. Like, there's mention of Chinook and I had his name earlier. Quan Chi is in it. Quan Chi's in it, and he didn't pop up till like Mortal Kombat 4 or something. So like, there's a couple things it pulls, but otherwise it's a whole lot of like, there's so many scenes where I'm like, oh, hey, they're in that stage. And it's not like, it's just the background or whatever, but it was cool. But like I said, the writing, the way the characters are handled, it feels so dumbed down. It feels like it was still written for kids, but with the violence that they can get away with now, because Mortal Kombat kids are 30s and 40s now. So,
Right.
Yeah, but not all of them have matured much past past 8 years old. So,
well, hey, listen, Exactly, and I don't need my Mortal Kombat cartoon movies to remind me of that fact. No, it did feel a little bit like, I don't know, like it just didn't know how to get the humor other than to like just be real dumb about it. But
Uh-huh.
if you're a huge Mortal Kombat fan like Dustin, if you haven't watched it, you clearly are a fan. Like, it's worth a watch. It's not bad, but because of the attempts at humor, which there were a couple good jokes. Okay, Raiden specifically in regards to Johnny Cage, like the stupidity of Johnny Cage, had the best laugh because at a certain point they're like, "Aren't we gonna tell him?" And he's like, "No, it amuses me." So just as like
Yes,
random
Raiden move
pettiness
right there.
Yeah. So anyway, off.
Yeah.
I'm off about that.
Okay.
I wanted to get that Mortal Kombat SEO, man.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah.
I mean, I did watch it. Okay. And that's okay. Let's move on.
Okay.
Where's that segue? You know what I like? Superheroes. You know what else I like? Horror movies. What if there were super Horios?
Okay.
What just happened here?
Now I have to. I'm trying to justify the post title of super horror that I put on here.
I mean, I kind of want cookies now. Horios.
Horios. We got to be careful with how we say that.
Yeah.
Horios. Yeah. As the New Mutants. That's what we're going to talk about. Sure, we're behind the times. This movie, dude. This director signed on for this movie 5 years before it finally got released. That's a long
crazy.
time.
Mhm.
That's a long time. Okay, so everybody knows, but hold on, let me do my little screen share deal. Everybody knows. The New Mutants came out last year, 2020. Bad time to come out too.
Yeah. We're the best timing because there were no other movies to really compete against.
That's a good
Yeah.
point. And I don't think it necessarily, I don't know, who knows what the total budget is. Disney probably doesn't even know because they didn't even produce most of it.
Right.
I don't think it lost money, though. I think it did okay. Or at least it did better than they were projecting.
Mhm.
Anyway, overview. 5 young mutants, just discovering their abilities while held in a secret facility against their will, fight to escape their past sins and save themselves. And this had the faceless girl.
A girl has no name.
There you go. Yes, thank you. Her. This Netflix chess playing girl. Melanie's like, who is that? I swear I've seen her somewhere. I'm like,
No, I
have you
know.
been on Netflix? You've seen her in that
Oh,
picture for that
okay.
chess movie.
Yeah, but I've seen her somewhere
Speaking
else.
of Netflix, the TV show or movie here.
Was she the girl in The Witch?
Yes.
Okay.
Witch.
That's where I'm thinking of her from.
And we got Stranger Kentucky things and some other people. That's none of which are even the main character, but the main character, I think, Alice.
That's not the main character.
That's
The main
not the main character. We're
the main character's that one, Blue
Right there.
Hunt or whatever.
Blue Hunt. How could I forget that name? I think she's a relative newcomer. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dustin said, she's the girl from Split. Yeah, that's it. Split and The Witch. Split is how I think is where it might have been her first big movie. Kind of noticed her. I forgot she was in The Witch.
Mhm.
Dustin said for him, New Mutants was a terrible movie with a bad final 10 minutes. That was a bad censoring it. He liked the final 10 minutes is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Let me find a better picture here. Oh, here we go. Some artwork. What'd you guys think of this?
I didn't hate it. entirely, but that's only really because I like the idea. But the movie itself was not well executed at all, or written, or just put together. It's not a good movie. But like I said, I like the idea behind it. They could have done something cool with it. It has a Brightburn feel, not quite as good as Brightburn, but like there's potential there. They just didn't live up to it at all. They're me. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Whoa.
How do I follow that? I was gonna say I agree, but I don't agree with what you just said. But with your thoughts on the movie, yeah, I would generally agree. I expected to kind of not like it. I expected to hate it. I thought it was gonna be terrible. There was a lot of people like really trash. I feel like, or at least maybe people just didn't care by the time it came out. But I've heard nothing good about it at any point. So my expectations were pretty low. I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it. The biggest issue, well, there's lots of little issues that build up.
There's a lot of issues once you start thinking about it.
Right.
This thing suffers from the Prometheus, what I call the Prometheus effect, where you're like, yeah, it was all right. I didn't mind it. There's something bothering me though. Oh, it's this. Oh, and this. Oh, and this. Oh, when I start thinking about this movie doesn't work at all. The powers fall apart. The plot falls apart. What did that even mean?
I knew I was trying to hurry up and get it in before Jesse jumped in because I knew he was salty about it. I could just tell by the way you were talking about it. Okay, yeah. Long story short, wasted potential. I didn't hate it. Jesse, so what did you think of this?
I really liked it. Well, okay, so I am salty about it because I have all these nitpicks and they really that's the thing. It's like I watched it, I enjoyed it on its face, and I was like, this is not as bad as everybody said. Like I thought it was going to be like worse than X3, and that's the game I've been playing because I was talking to my good friend Ben. We've talked to Ben. We've even had Ben. We even interviewed Ben at one point on the show, and because whenever we get going with comic books, him and I, that's kind of how we found each other in high school. Is we were the comic nerds. There were more of us than that, but like in our grade, it was pretty much us two, and so we bonded over comics and X-Men in particular. And so I was talking to him about it a little bit earlier this evening, and he was like, worst X-Men movie, and I was like, man, I don't know if we play that game, I don't know that I can go that far, because when I think of like Apocalypse and even more recent Dark Phoenix, there is literally nothing I remember about Dark Phoenix. I know they tried to do the Dark Phoenix saga again, and that's about it. Like I can't tell you a standout moment from that movie. Granted, I haven't watched it more than once, but I've only watched this once. And I can tell you several things about this movie. This movie, like, there's memorable bits in it, whether they were good or not. Mm-hmm. I remember parts of this movie. X-Men Apocalypse, I remember a little bit about the movie. There were some memorable bits, but most of it, unmemorable. X3 is more memorable than either of those two movies for me. Not for good reasons, but more memorable. And that's kind of where this sits. This sits somewhere around X3 for me, which is not high praise, but it's not the worst X-Men movie in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Randall, I think maybe since you seem to enjoy it, what is it that makes you like this show?
Okay, I like the premise. I like the premise a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the kind of movie where you can see clearly, and this might not really be a good thing, but you can see clearly the influences and what they were trying to do. And sometimes it works, sometimes it's there, but overall it just wasn't. But I really like the premise. It's a, let's take New Mutants and Sorry, I got distracted by Paul's comment. It's New Mutants, not exciting. That's his comment. And
With
it
an X.
derailed my brain. So, well, let's take New Mutants and let's do Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which is something I was talking to Melanie about when we were watching this last night. I was like, it's got a nightmare, it's got a Nightmare on Elm Street. It must be 3, Dream Warriors or whatever, with the kids and I was like, not that that's an amazing movie, but that's not a bad thing. They're obviously kind of channeling that kind of teen horror, maybe 80s teen horror feel. And
Oh, you mean something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
oh, man. Listen, when they watch TV, they only watch Buffy.
That's it.
Come on.
Gee, I wonder.
Also,
Wonder what they're trying to channel here.
less than subtle, but I guess I appreciate the nod to the moment is like, Stark or whatever. Maisie Williams is kind of giving the one chick the eyes a little bit. And on the scene is from Buffy. Why are they watching that episode, by the way? That's like the most depressing episode of television ever made.
Right.
But it also has like the first on-screen network TV lesbian kiss.
Right.
So they're watching that scene. I'm like, okay, yep. I mean, I know where this story's going. That's fine. But listen, they're watching Buffy. So yeah, Buffy. I wasn't wild about the weird design of the happy face guys, but even their overall like body design reminded me of certain characters from a very popular episode of Buffy. And
The
so,
Quiet
yeah,
Men, or was it
Yeah.
something else? Yeah.
that might be what they were called, but yeah, it's that episode. Yeah. So, yeah, I liked all that. That was potentially good. The problem is it just didn't go far enough. There was a couple scenes where I'm like, okay, they actually kind of shot this like a horror movie. The story is a horror movie story, but most of it is super bright, saturated colors, not shot like a horror movie, shot like a modern superhero movie. And so that's,
Right.
yeah, that's where the pros kind of hit the like cons, where it's like they didn't commit. And can I run through a little bit of facts? I read Wikipedia today.
Sure.
All of Wikipedia. No. Nightmare on Elm Street.
Because I'm
3.
gonna tear through this thing like a demon bear.
I know. Oh yeah. Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Well, I got to get through the production stuff because that's the stuff that was interesting, because I kept hearing about there were so many production troubles, and watching it I was like, well, it's a mess kind of, like tonally. But I didn't spot anything where it's like it wasn't like Fantastic Four, where you can see the reshoots. You know when the reshoot shots happened. Well, for one, there were never any reshoots for this. There were supposed to be. They didn't need, but because of like how things got delayed, and then inevitably, which they got delayed for, Deadpool 2, I think, was coming out, and they didn't want to have it's the same company, it was Fox, but they didn't want to have two of their own movies like kind of competing, so they delayed it. And then it was Dark Phoenix or whatever, and they're like, nope, delete it. And then Disney happened, and they're like, okay, delay it. And then COVID happened. And anyway, and during all that time, there were supposed to be reshoots. Apparently, every movie has like pickups they do. Technically, almost every movie does some sort of reshoots, but it's not like we need to fix this or change this. It's like, oh, there's some shots we're missing, or there's a plot hole here. Let's go shoot something to fill it. They didn't even do that. So I guess that could be a problem. But they were supposed to do reshoots like every time it got delayed until the last time. And they're like, okay, so time for reshoots? What do you want to do? And they're like, the cast all look way too old now. We shot this thing like 3-4 years ago. We can't do reshoots now. So they just, whatever. They rolled with it. That said, the tonal stuff it's definitely there. The original vision, of course, was horror movie, including Nightmare on Elm Street 3 specifically was an influence the director had mentioned, and I was like, well, yeah, I caught that one. And then the studio was like, well, let's push it towards a young adult movie. It's gonna be, we want a YA feel. And so then ultimately they're like, okay, we'll do that. And that's what the contract was signed for. Him and I don't remember who else. Some other people wrote the script, and when all said was done, when all was said and done, apparently there's a whole list of it. There were like 6 other people who had also contributed to the script, including a writer's room of 6 more people that were not like credited, hired by the studio, that threw in, like, pulled the script apart and put it back together. So like, it's one of those deals.
So this reeks of college group project where, like, you have to do something or you're not getting part of the grade.
Paul says, give them 2 years and $7 billion. And I'm sure they can get it right. That's the norm now, isn't it? Well, partway through, I was like, hashtag release the, what's his name? Something Boone cut or whatever.
Yeah, but it's 2 years and $70 million, right?
I don't need 3 more hours of this movie, though.
Hashtag release the Josh Boone cut. But
Yeah.
I don't think the Josh Boone cut. I think that you could probably re-edit this movie, but it doesn't. It's not the same type of thing. Because, so they shot it with some horror stuff, and then like, but studio wants YA, we're going to go YA. So they went more that direction. And then it came out, and made a ton of money, and the studio was like, whoa, horror movies, huh? So they cut the first trailer to make it look more like the horror movie that it was originally, the director wanted it to be, and release that. So that's why we're all like, whoa, it's a horror movie. And they're like, well, we're going to have to reshoot some stuff because it's more YA than horror at this point.
Right.
And then there we are. Then the reshoots just never really happened.
So it never got shot to be a horror.
It never really.
It does explain a lot, because it was like we're all gonna hang out in the attic, like friends, but more like enemies. So we're like frenemies in an attic together.
It's so rushed. It's so rushed. Like I feel like even the story that's there could be better, and this is a big gripe that Melanie had. If the characters were better, but everybody's so rushed and like stereotypical, like
they all had one note.
Yeah, and something that Randall maybe pointed out to me, not only just stereotypical, but they're like, hey, you're white, you take the worst accent you can of your stereotypical character and then just beat it, to
play
death.
It up. Yeah.
So bad, all of them. Well, no, actually, Maisie was okay, but the other 2 were not. But that like the horror idea is a good idea if they would have gone with that, and maybe they could have used that to make these characters and their interactions seem more cohesive, makes sense, rather than teens that are fighting, don't really know each other, kind of seem to be fighting, and then all of a sudden they're just like, I'm going to tell you my life story. Maybe they could have used the horror plot, the killer dreams, appropriately, and instead of just one person's dreams being seen by other people, they all got to experience each other's nightmares and bond over that. Like, what is that, crazy miners all threatening to kill me? Well, that's my dad and his friends, Then everybody gets to know each other's stories. You get to care about everybody. They all get to bond with each other. And you can do it with less time and energy than the little side tangents that they go on. It just the way they misused the material, in my opinion, in a horrible way, and it just made a worse movie.
Right. Yeah, I was muted for a second, and it's a good thing because I'm glad I didn't interrupt you, Melanie. I tried.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It was me being a D-bag. I wanted to comment on the race thing because that is also another thing I learned a little bit more about. But I would agree, if with the kids, the doctor is a whole nother thing apparently. With the kids, if they're white, I feel like the direction was like, you're from Kentucky, you're Russian, you're this. Do the most stereotypical version of that accent as you possibly can. And if they weren't white, they're like, do whatever. I ain't saying nothing. Like, cause
Right, right.
They're just normal, and then everyone else is like so like they're
Rich Brazilian kid, you're from California.
Right.
right. You just speak English. How about you?
Even though, like in the comics, he's very much Brazilian.
People were very upset because in the comics he's Afro, like he is. What do they call? Is it Afro Brazilian?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's a little whitewashed in that the actor they cast, he's not black at all, and the character apparently is black Brazilian, which is a big portion of Brazil. Also, the doctor apparently in the comics is black.
Oh yeah, she is actually. You're right.
I didn't know, and I was like, oh
yeah,
like okay, so she's straight up whitewashed.
Yeah, that's right. They did change her ethnicity too.
That's strange too, because I mean, no offense to that actress, I might have seen her in other things and liked her. I didn't think that she was maybe my least favorite part of the whole thing. I didn't understand her purpose for a lot of it, maybe. And maybe that's because they did such lazy crap with her. Like she's always sleeping or drugged or whatever, to get her out of the way.
It was basically her power. I think her powers played into the plot kind of thing. Like, how do you keep these kids here? Her powers are force fields. That's literally her power. Right. But that just plays into, you just start in on the lazy logic of how these powers even work. Like, she was drugged. She was unconscious. Why can't they just leave now? Her powers her powers just work when she's asleep. And that's backed by the fact that Danny Moonstar's powers just work when she's asleep or doing anything. Like she could be totally occupied with whatever, and her powers are just on autopilot in the background, killing people.
That was something I had. She was knocked unconscious. That's not even just sleeping.
Yeah.
For a portion of it. So it made it seem like, and maybe this is true in the comics, spoilers, we're going to get into some spoilers. She conjures things. They just then exist. They're not like tied to her.
Okay, so some of that has context in the comic, and in particular in this storyline where she is unconscious, but it's more like she's in the dream, she's in her power, kind of like what happened in this a little bit, but not quite to the same degree. In fact, when they face the demon bear, Danny isn't there. Like Danny doesn't face the demon bear, ironically, in the comics.
Really?
So that may have been an improvement in this storyline, because it's like, but it seems like she should have to face her own fear.
Right.
Not just let the team do it.
It was so on the nose with like the way it set some of that stuff up. I appreciated the demon bear threat, I guess, but it's like, it's not necessarily good script writing to teleport your punches so transparently with the story about her dad and the necklace and you got to get that exposition out of the way somehow. But I don't know, it's just not very well handled here.
Right. I would agree, mostly because I mean they have that one tiny scene where she's up on the clock tower or whatever, but other than that, and maybe it's, again, I don't want to be mean to the actress. I don't know. I've never seen her in anything else. Maybe she's fine. I didn't get like this heartbroken sadness of losing your family and everything in your entire world from the little bit we got to focus on that. But,
right.
Even if you gloss that over, she seemed to get over it fairly quickly. And oh yeah, it just seems really lazy. It just seemed everything just, that's the whole thing. Everything in this movie seems really lazy. Like they didn't really try. They were just like, okay, we'll just take, these Lego brick pieces of movies and stick them together until they make a movie, rather than creating something new and that works, right?
Yeah, it's I think you're right. It really is like take the Lego brick pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of a YouTube video I seen recently where the guy was talking about movies. The issue with like they want the movie moments, but they don't want to do the work to get to the moments. So it's just some of these movies, and I think they were on about Star Wars, but some other like Disney stuff and various big movies now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just moment without the connecting pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of the issue with this I know this wasn't Disney, this was Fox for the most part, but that is kind of the issue with this is you think of the scene where I do generally like the setup though of like just the one adult there as the one kind of like authority figure who's also for whatever, they're apparently scared enough of her never to attack her, but and then she kind of loses it a little bit towards the end. Anyway, I like that idea of the one adult there who's not really on their side. But there's the scene where they drug her and then they're partying, I guess. I don't know where they got alcohol, if they were drinking. We just see a couple guys sitting there. Here's my backstory. And then chicks, two of the girls dancing in the hallway. And it's like, oh, I guess this is a party? Like, what are they really doing, though?
At this point, they should have just been leaving because Cecilia Reyes is unconscious.
And there was no, like, lead up to it at all. It was just all of a sudden, they're sneaking in a hallway. Like, it felt like there was something missing. Like, maybe they had some reshoots they should have done but never got a chance to.
Right.
But it suddenly they're sneaking through a hallway. They're sneaking through a hallway, and they're like, oh, what about what's her name? Well, I took care of her. I drugged her. I don't know what the dialogue wasn't that bad, but and then like I don't know, a better movie where we actually felt like we were with the characters and that the characters had been in these situations together rather than just suddenly there's characters and a situation. Here's some exposition. Would have actually like, what are we gonna do, or what are you doing, or here's the plot. We're gonna go make a little heist segment or section out of drugging this lady so that we can party with this booze I've got stashed over here or whatever. Or even a great example is like when we first get a scene really with we get to meet what's her name, the Russian chick,
Ilyana Rasputin.
Yes. She goes out front with the lady, or with the viewer surrogate. Blue is her actress.
Oh, Danny Moonstar.
Thank you. The names, whatever. We follow her outside, and she like ducks down behind this fountain, comes out with a spray can, and starts spraying graffiti. And it's like, wait, what? Really? Where'd you get that spray can? There's like 5 of you in this entire place, so you're just gonna graffiti and not get in trouble for it. I see no graffiti anywhere. Like, oh,
Also, yeah, where'd you get the spray can? Like,
she's
it's
the
nearest
bad girl.
town. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So stuff like that. It's silly.
You can't be the crazy one. That job's taken.
Oh yeah. I can deal with some of the cringe dialogue because these are supposedly damaged teenagers and kind of on the middle to younger end of teenagers, I guess. Like I think the lead's supposed to be like 16 or something. So teens are cringy. Like if you were to do it authentically, it would be embarrassing because teens are always trying to act cool. But it's not that. It's not good writing. It's embarrassing at times because it's bad writing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I wanted real quick just to add partially to what we were talking about, or what you were talking about with the moments and moments. It's not just it's worse than just, get to this moment, It's all get to this nostalgic moment. I've seen this movie before. I know this formula. That's what they're trying to get to, is the, oh yeah, I know this. Oh yeah, this is familiar. So it's even worse than just, a moment. It's a generic moment that you already know, which is the worst,
This was also originally, and for the most part, when they shot it, this was placed in the 80s. This was set in the 80s.
Was it?
Wow.
I didn't even know that.
Well, they changed it somehow. I guess probably cut out any direct references to 80s and put Buffy in there, because that's 90s.
Uh-huh.
Or even early 2000s. Definitely early 2000s with the clips that they showed. But yeah, apparently it was supposed to be set in the 80s, and then Dark Phoenix came out, which I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, was that one supposed to be in the 90s?
Maybe, but yeah.
But they
X-Men
they
trilogy-
kept gradually aging them up and having them be like a product of the time kind of thing.
right.
So like, what was First Class? Was that 60s or 70s?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And then
No.
then the next one was it Days of Future Past was 70s or 80s.
Right.
And then Apocalypse was 80s.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
But something came out and it scared the studio. They're like, no more of the period pieces.
Oh yeah.
No more period pieces, because if a movie doesn't do good, the studio's like, what was wrong with this movie that we engineered with a calculator to succeed?
Right.
It was set
And
in the
we
80s.
even have we even have an actor that was a character in Stranger Things.
Of all the movies, this one should have embraced it. It
Right.
felt
Right.
like it could
Turn it
have
into
been.
an 80s horror movie.
The premise of a character that's like manifesting thing from people's fears. It is Nightmare on Elm Street. If they would have embraced that, for the most part, that whole element felt like a non-existent part of the plot that just kind of like something would happen occasionally. That's weird.
Right.
And then I think just in general, the horror is so downplayed that it doesn't really feel relevant at all until it's the plot. Until
Right.
the plot gets to the point where it's like, we have to deal with this now.
Yeah.
This would have been the movie. The time period doesn't really matter, because it's not a farmhouse, but it's like whatever. They're set in a place where time period doesn't matter. Technology is not relevant to the story. Paul said mutants lost in time. And maybe, I don't know if this bothers you, Jesse, but a lot of people seem really hung up on how this connects to the X-Men universe. And they
Okay. Yeah. So I have plenty to say about that.
okay.
I don't know how we want to get into that.
Let me breathe for a little bit. I'll let someone else talk.
Oh, okay. Well, I really haven't talked about like what I even did like about this too much. I think the overarching thing that I really like, and I think really wish that they could have explored it more. Like if this movie has potential in any arena, it is in that idea that a new mutant can be more dangerous. It can be the most dangerous thing because they don't know how to control their power.
Right.
And creating the storyline around that, like the threat is the new mutant, like her ability is scary. And that part was almost convincing when they did it right. And like you were saying, when they did it wrong, it was forgettable at best. But when they did it right, like Danny Moonstar's power was almost more scary than anything they did with Dark Phoenix's power. Like, oh yeah, she's the most powerful. She's an alpha level mutant, and she could probably snuff you out if you gave her a Cerebro. But Danny Moonstar is somehow more terrifying because it's right there in your face and it's affecting everyone and it's pulling on their actual fears, and it can actually kill you. Like your fears can actually kill you, like a Freddy Krueger movie. Yeah.
Right.
So like that part, pretty cool. But when we get into is this an X-Men movie? That's where this really falls apart. Like I think this movie, first of all, would have really benefited from they don't know what's going on at all. They're really not aware of the X-Men, or they don't reference the X-Men. Like, leave them out of it almost, because once you start doing that, then it's like, oh, so Deadpool 2 is a hit. Let's make a whole movie about the kid from the school, but make them all messed up. Not just one messed up kid. They're all messed up.
That actually would have been a better movie. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, yeah, again, like they could not, it feels like they couldn't decide, though. It's like, okay, yes, this is an X-Men movie, and we know it's an X-Men movie because we've got to do this, and we got to be like, have you even seen the X-Men, bro? And do that whole thing, and then not really mention it again until we get reveals of the big threat that is never fully realized. That's a pretty big spoiler, but I mean, also, this is never going anywhere. It's not, they're setting up a sequel that will never happen. And even if they were going to do that, they needed to do that better. But you could see the writing on the wall here that this is never going to get a sequel. So we're not going to put an Easter egg in the after credits. That would have maybe paid off some of the references they were making.
Yeah, you're absolutely right with they just didn't know. Because they had apparently earlier versions of the script. Professor X was involved. Another character, Storm. Like, it would have been, and it would have been the like.
I don't know how they would have pulled that off to have them actually tied in. It
would have been like the third trilogy of versions of the younger thems, you know. So McAvoy and I don't remember who played Storm. The good Storm, not the later, not the other Storm. I don't really care for her that much. But, you know, they wrote that out. So, I think what I'd read is the studio's like, well, Logan isn't totally separated, but it is off in its own thing, doing a thing.
Right.
Logan did very well. Deadpool did very well. And they're like, so it doesn't have to be directly tied.
Right.
So Logan is, Logan's directly tied. I get it doesn't feel like an X-Men movie, so maybe that's their thinking. But they're also like, but then again, you know, franchise. No. So I feel like the Essex Corporation,
Essex Corporation. I mean, they
played a larger role at one point. It gets a mention here, and there was intention to shoot a post-credit scene that set up Mr. Sinister.
That's who Essex is.
Okay.
Sinister's name that he uses is Nathaniel Essex, and so that's like, so those two schools. So the school in Deadpool 2 is also an Essex school.
It's interesting that they're like, well, Logan and Deadpool were did their own thing, so maybe we can do that with that here, which means tying them directly to Logan and Deadpool. Like, what kind of logic is that?
Yeah.
You know what, though, you remind me of another opportunity that they missed. God, they really did this thing so wrong. They could have, with New Mutants and the setting, they could have gone a little bit, what do you call it? Legion. You know, like where he's like, am I crazy? Am I, you know, that with the whole, you know, New Mutants don't know how to control their powers, that works so good. And then also the horror setting because of what's Starbuck's powers. And I understand they needed that lady there to be the thing that keeps them under lock and key. But even she kind of would have been unnecessary almost. I mean, they needed her there for that purpose. But the whole movie, I mean, the whole thing could have ridden just on that. And then she's just another obstacle at the end. You know what I mean?
Right.
So many. That's why maybe that's part of the reason I'm so happy about this movie, because it could have done so much better, even if you don't know anything about X-Men.
I want to make you matter.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm sure that the reason that Legion's not involved is because of wherever the rights are. I'm sure the rights are up in the air because they made a show or someone else, right?
Yeah.
Legion is involved in the New Mutants, and can you imagine what Danny Moonstar's powers would do to a schizophrenic with multiple personalities, and each personality has their own power? Can you imagine that movie?
That would have been amazing.
Maybe that's this movie, since it couldn't commit fully to the 80s teen horror thing, is completely unnecessary because that was it's not an original angle, by the way, but that was its main original or interesting angle, because every other concept that they hit on, yeah, it was done in Legion way better.
Right.
The problem is a studio doesn't want to risk a superhero movie on things like psychological horror. Legion was so good. Like, I wish psychological horror in particular suits mutant X-Men type characters, because Legion at times felt like straight up horror when it wasn't doing musical dance numbers and crazy stuff.
Right.
But I don't think a studio would ever back especially now, Disney. I'm impressed with what they did with WandaVision, even though that was still kind of reined in my opinion. They would never back anything as weird in movie form as something like Legion was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So here's another thing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Since we're now we're digging into comic stuff, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's dig into their powers and their fears, because this is at the heart of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the characters, first of all, they had such one-note backstories that they were forgettable. Cannonball, in particular, had it was the most obvious story.
Well, maybe that's the thing that ties it to the 80s, because I mean, I'm sure there are some coal mines still in the world, but the coal miner's son is a pretty old stereotype, you know?
Right.
But yeah, go on. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then Sunspot's power, Roberto's, was just like, I was with my girlfriend and my powers came on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was his whole story. That was it. And my parents are rich.
I was actually concerned at a point, and maybe this is how it is that I'm wrong, but I was concerned that his powers were linked to like his sexual attraction, like it only happened when he was excited or something. You know what I mean? And I'm like,
His
that's a
powers
really
are
bad
based on
superpower
the
to have.
sun. They gave us no context for his powers. His power, he absorbs the sun and it turns into heat or kinetic energy or of some form. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, like they gave us no context for his powers. And the way that they explain that away is he just doesn't use them.
Mm-hmm.
He never uses them. Nobody even knows why he's here or what he does.
He doesn't want to talk about it.
He doesn't want to talk about it. Yeah. And then Wolfsbane, Rain, she I mean, yeah, her backstory is almost the most accurate, but also it's the most boring in the way that it's portrayed. It's just, that she turns into a wolf and her family is very Catholic.
Yeah.
And so you're a witch, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes you evil. Well, who else was even in this movie?
The Russian chick.
Okay, so the Russian chick probably had the coolest powers,
Yeah,
and that was like the biggest payoff in terms of visual effects and all of that. And so you can just like almost shut your brain off and go, "That was cool," right? Mm-hmm. But like her ability is to transport in and out of limbo. Limbo is an actual plane, and these like I believe at one point she's even like kidnapped by little imps and taken there, and she's there, and then like she's there as a 6-year-old girl, and she comes back and she's like, an adult or at least a teenager when she comes back. Right. Boom, that kind of thing. And then she's got the soul blade, and she's essentially been ruling limbo.
Mm-hmm.
Like that whole thing. But in this, they totally changed her. They gave her all the visuals. They gave her essentially the same abilities, but they changed her backstory so dramatically. I had to look it up to see what any of this was supposed to mean, because I could take it a lot of different ways. It's like, what are the Smiley Men? Are they from limbo? Because because of what I know about the comics, it became really confusing.
Mm-hmm.
But spoilers, this is like the child's child fear like it's almost a cool thing. So I wish they would have like explained it.
Right.
It's like the childlike twisting and into fear of what was she was the victim of child sex trafficking, and she
Right.
would escape that by jumping into limbo, and the smiley men were a representation of the bad men that did bad things.
Which
Mhm.
I like that. Getting away from her powers for just a moment, I like that as a concept. I
Right.
wish they would have been presented a little bit better, because I found it's almost laughable at first when they
Right.
still have the masks, but it's still a little creepy in a very
Almost
I
like
don't
a
know.
shock type of thing.
But taking that real world thing, like horrible trauma, and making it into a literal monster, I enjoy. That's a kind
Right.
of Doom Patrol Legion level of like, yeah, okay, we're gonna take this truly horrible thing and make an actual monster out of it.
Right.
It's psychological, but also like tied into this superpowers. So now it's an actual monster. I kind of I appreciated that.
Mhm.
But they didn't
Yeah.
make it clear enough. In order for that to be effective, we have to understand that that's what's happening. And maybe I'm thick and I didn't grasp it.
Mhm.
Like, it was clear that bad things were happening to her, but they just wouldn't commit far enough to this is what happened.
Her powers, as she explained them, she created Limbo
Right.
according to this, and so I gathered, I was like, oh, so she's just another. She can do anything.
Well,
She's
right.
essentially another.
They created a Wanda
Scarlet
out of
Witch,
this.
or
Yeah.
as far as I could tell, another like Moonstar, except actually can control it type thing.
Right.
Just can do whatever, and for whatever reason, just does these certain things. Especially
Yeah. So
when
her powers
her
are the
puppet dragon
least.
is alive with her.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, okay, so she could just make things. Okay,
yeah.
but
And I guess that's what her powers are in this version.
also,
Yeah.
how, whatever. I guess maybe that's how it is in the comics with the. How can you teleport to another dimension, but like maybe not teleport back
Mm-hmm.
a little bit that way outside of the force field? The force field is real.
It's
is
real
iffy.
shaky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is the this is the worst part. At the end, when everything's kind of resolved and whatnot,
Mhm.
like, it doesn't, like, I don't know, it's just like kind of wrapped up in a bow kind of situation. But in reality, it's like, oh, now we know what Danny Moonstar's powers are. Her powers literally killed her family,
Mhm.
and there's no impact. Like,
Right.
they don't even touch that. They're just like,
They did.
man, we're lucky to be alive. I
They
literally
really didn't.
killed my father, who I love, and I wear
Not-
this necklace around my neck.
Which
Not just her father, like her whole.
Yeah. Everyone.
Mhm.
She killed everyone.
But I mean, you could say the same about the coal miner too. You know,
Right.
but he at least
that
he beat himself up about it.
That was
Right.
all their stories. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
I guess it wasn't the werewolf. She just killed her priest, and
Did she?
Ileana, I think, killed a whole bunch of her captors. I'm guessing, but the other
Yeah.
ones, yeah, they killed people close to them or their family or girlfriend or whatever. Like, that's all their stories, so it shouldn't really be a surprise. But
like, that realization, the fresh realization.
with her,
Right.
it's not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying the whole time. She doesn't seem as upset as I feel someone should be under. Even if she didn't kill them, she should be more upset than she is. And having killed them, yeah, that would be devastating.
Right.
And you don't get any of that. Well, none of them are extremely emotional, honestly. But her character, I would imagine, should be the most at this point in time.
Yeah,
You know?
I was kind of off put where she's told that her whole family, or her whole town, so essentially everyone she ever knew is dead. And then 2 scenes later, because then she gets like introduction to the group scene where she's just kind of like, I guess, listening. And then the next scene, she walks in the room like, like okay, like
Right.
pleasant, contented look on her face. I'm like, wait, really? So I was off put by that. There is nothing. You know what? She cold. She cold blooded.
She real cold. She'd be making out with a werewolf at the same time sending creepy smiley men into Magic's solitary confinement. Like,
Right, and then be like,
what
"Don't
the
worry."
heck kind of mutant power allows you to do that?
Also, yeah, what triggered her at that moment? Why?
That's what I kept
that
thinking. It
doesn't
was
make
like,
sense.
wait, her power is going off now?
I and an it has the movie really does have a weird way of downplaying big moments, like she branded her girlfriend. She put a horrible W brand. It's her power. Werewolf chick knows it was her. She knows it was her, and she's like, like upset about it for not the werewolf chick. Moonstar's upset about it for half a moment, and then they're talking and they're fine, and then they just move on to the next moment because, yeah, like there's no like impact from it. It's like you burnt a W on her neck. You've seen the thing on her back. That means that's gonna scar forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
weird.
not just, and it's not even just that. It's like their romance, which I think again, I don't know. I don't really know these people from the comics, but I'm assuming if they have a romance, it's done way better in the comics because in this they just like we met. Like it's like a Romeo and Juliet. The next day, we're in love for some reason, no reason, but we are. And then this big crazy thing happens, and I'm gonna risk everything for you because I love you. But I don't feel any of that, especially from. And I already have feelings for Maisie because of Game of Thrones. So I was like, well, she did okay, actually, in my opinion. But that's because I think partially, at least, because I already like her. But I thought she did a pretty good job of doing her character. But I don't buy that her character would so easily slip into that kind of a relationship, seeing the past that she had, that how horrible she felt about her powers, that she wanted to be punished and whatever, or not necessarily punished, but like have it expunged from her because it was the devil. And she's just gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm cool with being a lesbian, that's fine. I don't buy that,
I thought that was potentially interesting, and maybe you know what, I'm not a lesbian. Maybe they're tired of that plot line, but that seemed like a potentially interesting. I even said, I was like, so she's potentially an interesting, very like a fundamentally Christian raised, conflicted lesbian werewolf. That's a kind of that could be an interesting complex character, but it's not presented that way because you're right. She doesn't seem to have like any problem with that side of it, but at the same time, maybe a little conflicted about being a werewolf.
Right.
It's weird.
She's an interesting character in the comics, but like at that point, no, she wasn't. She was essentially just a straight woman that is a werewolf. They do have a bond in the comics, but it plays into powers that Dani doesn't show in this movie at all. Like part of her thing, and again, racial stereotypes and whatnot. Native American superhero has this ability, this empathy, this empathic link with animals, and so why does Wolfsbane and Moonstar have a connection? Because when she's a werewolf, she can communicate.
Oh no!
Oh, that's bad.
So I'm glad they didn't go that route with it, but then instead, what they were like, maybe they could make out instead.
Yeah, I didn't mind that, but
no, that was fine. But it was, yeah.
I was somewhat impressed, and then Melanie's like, "Well, I don't know, hold up," because I was like, "Uh-oh, Native American," and this is something even still all the time. I'm like, why, when there's a Native American actor in a movie, that's their character,
right?
They're just the Native American, and everything to do with them has to do with them being Native American, like. So when
somewhat the way it's played in this, her power is so linked to the demon bearer or whatever that comes from a Native American story, which is actually not the actual Native American story. If you look at the actual Native American story, it's actually 2 wolves and not 2 bears. And I like that it actually was 2 bears in the comics, because I was worried they changed it in the movie since they already had a dog character.
The werewolf.
Yeah.
You can't do 2 wolves.
Right.
And I was kind of like, I was impressed. I was like, oh, they didn't really play on that too much. But I guess, yeah, Melanie, you're right. Big plot point is, but I mean, that's not as bad though. That is,
Yeah.
Yeah, they did downplay that a little bit more than they just like white people, worst possible stereotype.
Right. They're like, you're Irish, you're super Catholic, you're Russian. Well, actually,
you're a jerk.
Yeah,
you're the mean girl then.
You're cold-hearted. Yeah. You're from Kentucky. Your dad works at a coal mine, and you're dumb. No, I'm sorry. He wasn't necessarily dumb, but you don't get to know him at all. So I don't really have any feelings about him, actually.
Well, in the comics, he's essentially invincible once he starts his power. So like him with having a broken arm the whole time, it's like, well, that would have had to happen on a crash landing, because he's invincible when he's flying around.
They didn't really explain his powers at all. I'm like, so is he like a speedster, only like weird vibrational speedster? I have no clue.
He flies. Like he blasts off like a cannonball. Boom. Mm-hmm. He flies with concussive force behind him. While he is in that form, while he is taking flight, he is invulnerable.
They did like muddy the waters on because like he would get the shaky hand and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of appreciated that he had like a weird. I liked that he was into self-harm. No, he had like a weird Listen, if these are your characters, okay?
Yeah.
He had a weird self-harm thing that I was like, that's kind of interesting. Like for a character who I'm guessing is a fairly invulnerable. He did have a broken arm, or a cast at least, the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But like he seemed to always have a beat up face, and it wasn't even consistent with the bruising. But then later we see he gets really upset about thinking about the coal mines, and like cannonball punches himself in the face. So I was like, oh, that's weird and interesting. But that also doesn't go anywhere. It's just a thing that's there for a scene.
Yeah, it would have been nice if they would use that, or maybe use that to connect to Moonstar, since she also killed her family and maybe some strangers. Oh no, definitely some strangers.
He could have helped her through that somehow.
Right.
He's like, they could have had a moment.
Let's go outside and beat the crap out of each other, and we'll feel so much better.
Right.
That's what they should have done. According to the movie. I mean, I'm sure they could have done something actually more appropriate, but that's the way this movie likes to take it. They're like, beating it up on yourself makes you feel better.
Bring out the whatever you call it.
Oh yeah, you can Da Vinci Code this thing. Yeah,
they'll just have a self-harm party. It's cool.
A self-harm party. Oh,
ain't no party until someone gets. What is the name of that thing? I can't remember.
Cat of Nine Tails, or
yeah.
Flailed, flogged.
Right.
That actually seems more appropriate for the Irish person, but
see, they didn't write it. They wrote it.
You're right.
These people.
Anyway.
These people. Not the Irish. I'm talking about the people who wrote the script.
Yeah.
This group of like 6 to 12 guys.
Yeah, clearly. Who really dug that episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, apparently. Because Tara and Willow, star-crossed lovers there.
Witches.
Right? Oh, yeah. Witches.
Yeah.
All 2,000 writers.
2,000 writers.
So
I do like, Randy, that you're in your list of things that you liked about this movie. You're like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer twice. That's that, and like one other thing, and you're like, those are the things I like about this movie.
I was really happy. There were two Buffy scenes, and I was happy both times. I was like, all right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like their lesbian relationship. Yeah, it seemed fast and forced and a little heavy-handed and unnecessary. But they showed that scene from Buffy, so I'm 100% on board with it.
Yeah.
No, I was thinking about it earlier in anticipation for this conversation, which we should wrap up here soon. Why, and Paul, I'm glad you're still here. Why does this not make me angry the way Brightburn makes me angry? Because they are essentially the same. Roughly, they have the same issue of like a really cool premise that I like the idea of superheroes, but horror. Except this should even be more so because this is like, it's got mutants.
It's got a literal werewolf.
Right. But like 80s horror specifically. Why am I not so mad? And it's because my expectations, I think, by the time we sat down to watch this were so low. Brightburn, I was hyped all the way up to starting it.
Right.
So it's just,
I have one extra excuse for this movie that I don't have for Brightburn. And they do suffer from the same thing. But in this movie, part of the thing that it suffers from, in my opinion, even though there were ways to kind of counteract it, the main thing it suffers from is you can't take a premise and try to introduce 5 new characters and have enough time to give them all full backstories to make us give a crap about them. But when you're having a team movie, that's kind of the thing you need to do, which is why Marvel works better than a lot of other movies, because they did have their own movies before they made them into a team. So you already know them and care about them. You can't take a team and unknown team, at least, and shove them into one movie together and expect to have the time to give them all full backstories and make the character development that makes us give a crap about these characters enough to like this movie. That's the first mistake they make, I think, with this. And then there were ways to get around that a little bit. It still probably wouldn't have been a great movie, and they didn't use any of those ways. So in the end, it was destined to fail because they don't know movies well enough, I guess.
I mean,
isn't it sad that people who make movies don't know them as well as us who watch them?
Well, and when we think of what would make these better, we also don't have to deal with studios and investors who have millions to $1 billion, millions of dollars invested in the thing, who all have their different opinions. But I will say, like, it is possible, because the very premise of this is like, is Breakfast Club meets Nightmare on Elm Street 3 with mutants, with X-Men. And look at Breakfast Club. This you can do it like there's all the characters, you get to know all the characters very well, but that's because you've spent the movie with the characters,
right,
getting to know them getting to know each other, and it's not just them telling another character in out of nowhere their backstory or like their one defining scene. Breakfast Club takes the entire movie before we get to that scene. It's the scene towards the end when, whatever, it was a Ben or you're at the old whatever house and smoke up Johnny or whatever it is, right? Like,
right.
You get that scene after having been with these characters for like an hour. And
this movie's not much longer than an hour.
An hour and 34 minutes. So less than an hour and a half with credits, right? Or if you cut off the credits.
Right.
Going into it, I was actually kind of like, oh, sweet. It's only an hour and a half. It's not a 2 hour, 20-minute slog like most movies anymore. And good. We'll power through it quickly. It needed more time, though. Like it
did.
It crammed too much in, and it didn't take time where it needed to. On the other side, Brightburn wasted time on things trying to be a horror movie, but not doing it in the right way, I feel like. So, same but different.
Can I comment real quick about Guardians is the exception, not the rule then? You're wrong, only because, in my opinion, you're wrong. Only because that is a comedy, or a sci-fi maybe even. It's not, you don't have to care as much about people that make you laugh, maybe. That's not the right way to put it. it's just a different setup. You know, if you're in a horror movie, either you're there to die, or we have to care about you. You know, or even better, both. This was, I guess, a young adult movie, but it should have been a horror movie. And in the horror movie setting, they should have died right away, which none of them were going to, I guess, because they're the mutants. Then they should have had extra people to die, or you know, they need to develop them more, or otherwise it's not going to be a memorable or good movie, in my opinion.
They could have had Beak there. They could have just killed Beak.
I don't know who Beak is, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
Guardians does have some advantages. One of their characters only says one line
That's true.
over and over. So
Yeah, and that's the one they killed off. So sorry. No backstory. There you go.
and this wasn't written by James Gunn. So
Right. That's clear.
not to say James Gunn can do no wrong. I'm sure he can. But Slither. Slither is the movie, dude. Every time, like, James Gunn, director of Guardians of the Galaxy, blah, blah, blah. And every time, you know, when he's involved in a new movie, every time. He was loosely involved with Brightburn. Now that
Was he?
he was a producer. Now that I recall, his name was attached to that. That's part of the reason I was super excited. But
Slither is amazing, though.
that's the thing, though. Every time I see one of those commercials, I'm like, forget those movies. You put Slither on that list.
Yeah, but not enough.
Slither.
I don't think enough people have seen it, which is a travesty. Because Slither is amazing.
Your typical soccer mom isn't gonna be like Slither, sweet. They're gonna be like, oh, Guardians of the Galaxy with the funny raccoon.
If they pitched it right, if they had some like if they had the lady they have in that movie, or actually it might be a guy at that point, the guy they have in that movie in the basement being like eating a person, being like, "Don't you judge me!" Oh my gosh, that's such a great scene.
So our review of New Mutants is go watch Slither. Just because.
Really, yeah.
Yes.
And heck, while you're at it, you might as well watch Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Yeah.
Might get a more cohesive idea here.
It is not the best of
It's not even
the.
a good movie, to be honest.
It's not the best.
Well, no.
It does have some of the most memorable kills, though, that I will give it. The head in the TV, and then the like weird puppet tendon thing. Two of the most memorable kills, I think, of my entire life watching Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
Yeah.
If you want a fun exercise, though, you can watch this movie and come up with 5 to 7 different ways to make it better.
Yes.
You could make it a better X-Men movie. You could make it a better horror movie. Heck, you could pull off both somehow.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm okay with it being separated from X-Men. It doesn't need. Not every movie has to.
I think they could have pulled off the X-Men tie because it could be loose. It wasn't very strong to begin with, aside from the name drop, which we've already done, the Essex name drop and tying it to Sinister. But if they were going to do that, they needed a payoff. There was zero payoff to that, and they just didn't go there. They just didn't commit on any level. They didn't commit to the X-Men thing, because if they did, then they needed to go further, and they didn't commit on the horror movie level either, because they needed to go further.
Right. And I have a feeling, I seen a Melanie face. I have a feeling I don't know. I don't know the director's feelings on it.
The secret is they were infected by fear. It was Danny Moonstar's power all along. Not Agatha, Danny Moonstar.
I don't know. I think this is how you get X-Men into the MCU proper. Do it.
I just saw Paul's comment. More people have seen Human Centipede than Slither. That is a travesty. It makes me super sad.
Human Centipede is not great. But it's, people. It's people. There's nothing I can say.
Exactly.
There's nothing I can say.
That's a very good description of it. It's people.
They should reshoot the movie, but in the style of Scooby-Doo, and they unmask Sinister at the end.
Oh God.
So, in short, I think that's our show. Hey, real quick, if you guys want to do a solid and also get yourself some comics, I got a new Humble Bundle link for you. We are a Humble partner. This is not like a paid spot, but I do have an affiliate link that if you click it, we might get a couple pennies off of that purchase. Interestingly, Jesse, not to sidetrack too long because I really want don't want this to go 2 hours. I bought a Humble Bundle the other day, as I messaged you about.
Yeah.
I could not choose. I couldn't the slider deal where you can change.
You have to when you go down to the bottom of the page, you have to. There's a little arrow that says and you have to click it, and it will expand it, and then you can do the slider. So they hid the slider. You have to
I couldn't find it anywhere.
Wow.
Anyway, user error probably, but if you go to this link and click and get yourself the new and classic D&D by IDW Comics Humble Bundle, we'll get a little bit out of it because this is an affiliate link. So yeah, anyway, the Humble Bundle is D&D Comics by IDW, and it says new and classic. And I was looking through some of the titles, so I'm also assuming that includes stuff maybe published previously to whenever IDW got the license. I don't know how long they've had the license. It's got a bunch of Dragonlance classics, Dragonlance Chronicles, Dungeons and Dragons.
Any Forgotten Realms titles in there, I'm sure.
Yep.
Some Dritz Do Erden.
A whole bunch of stuff. And it's the usual Humble Bundle thing. They got a bunch of tiers. If you pay, like a buck, you get several. More than $10, you get a bunch more. Like it's Humble Bundle. It's comics. And this one supports Hasbro Children's Fund.
Mm-hmm.
And it is going for about 17 more days from the time of the stream. I think it ends about May 2nd. So hit up grawlixpodcast.com/IDW bundle. It's GRAWLIX podcast.com/IDW bundle. Or if the redirect's not working for you, just go to our website and scroll down and find the Humble Bundle link, like the banner. It'll just take you to the Humble Bundle main page. You can find it from there.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right.
I've randomly decided we're doing ad spots for Humble Bundle now. Yeah.
Jesse, are you wearing a fingerless glove?
It's my tendonitis glove.
No.
Oh, okay.
You gotta say it cooler than that. He is from Breakfast Club now.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
You can tell us a story about how.
Gee, Dad.
How Papa Kiefer threw a carton of cigarettes and
Oh my God,
up, Jesse.
My dad, he'd be like, "How was your day? Did you do basketball after school? Do you like basketball? Oh, you do." He's got almost a little bit of that northern, accent to it. You do.
Nah, I love your parents. It's even funnier thinking about it. Thinking about your actual dad in that. Smoke up, Jesse.
Oh my God.
All right. Anyway. That's all I got. Melanie.
Yeah.
What should we be amazed about?
Oh, you should be amazed about a study that was done by Professor Tom Denson of University of South Wales and others that discovered that the more abusive tweets targeting women an area has, the more domestic violence arrests it will have the following year, which I find amazing. It's not that a lot of domestic abuse in an area will create misogynistic behavior. It's that misogynistic behavior predicts approximately a year in advance domestic abuse. That is crazy to me. I never would have expected that, but that's what these studies are showing, is that, yeah, if you see posts that
Like
are
misogynistic tweets and
mhm,
posts and social
and
media posts.
yeah, and things that are, denigrating to women. Oh, and not just women. I'm sure probably the LGBTQ community also predicts abusive behavior in the future, which is nuts. But they are putting, and a lot of times I think, not that this isn't a useful use of science, but that sometimes I'm like, but why? But in this case, I was kind of impressed. They're like, we're using this to these predictions. Well, and they call them predictions, but like, it's a lot of science to say that yes, this is what happens when you see a lot of misogynistic tweets. Domestic abuse happens later. They're using that to focus funds for abuse shelters and social services and therapy, to funnel extra funds into areas where they can see that it's going to be in the future because of these tweets. And that's a pretty awesome use of science, in my opinion.
So you're saying there's going to be a lot of I should just stop. You're saying that there's going to be a lot of like shelters and stuff just randomly popping up around the Mar-a-Lago resorts. Is that what's happening soon?
He can't tweet.
Yeah, probably.
So
Not anymore. It takes a year. She just said.
Oh, you're right.
It's
you're right.
predictive.
No,
Yeah,
this is.
it is
This
predictive.
There's a comment. No, go on. From what you're like.
You can see it. You can see it. It's like,
So-
he's gonna get political.
This isn't the normal. Maybe I should have had you go with the spider web music story, but it's not the usual. Aren't you amazed? Because it's like, aren't you amazed when there's a lot of misogynistic tweets? Oh, people gonna get beat in a year. So it is interesting, though. It's an interesting.
I'm sorry.
So no,
Oh.
it was interesting to me because it's a social media thing, and I don't know why that. It's interesting to me, but it is weird because I would assume, because when you had first told me this before, I was like, well, duh. There's gonna there's a more like an area that there's more abusive men. There's gonna be more misogynistic tweets or posts, but you pointed out like it's not that. It's that when there's an uptick a year later, there's an actual uptick in the violence. And when there's an uptick in abusive posts, there's a delay, and then it reflects in real life. And that's very strange, because it's like, so is that just an indication of things are brewing, or is that like an influence from social media on the real world? How does the reflection go,
Well, that was one of the things that was discussed in the article also. And their take on it is it probably is feelings that people already had, but when this is when people are talking this way in the area, it allows them to not only let these feelings out, but kind of like feed them more. It's kind of like the new Mutants and their evil bears. There's two bears inside of you. The one you feed, the misogynistic wife beating one, if you feed that bear, then you're gonna go beat your wife. It's like that,
Don't feed the domestic.
Don't feed that bear.
Yeah,
That's a
don't-
terrible bear.
Don't feed the domestic abuse bear, please.
Feed Pooh Bear. All he wants is honey all the time.
Well,
Yep.
I feel like after these last 4.5 years, the term has been thrown around so much that it's almost a triggering term to certain people, but embolden, I guess.
Yeah.
Like the post
Normalized.
gets out there
Yeah.
and circulates till finally people are like, ah. I
Yeah.
don't know.
No, yeah, I would agree with that.
Not to make light of that, okay?
No.
Listen, anytime we get serious, you got to realize this is how we handle it.
Yeah.
This is how we handle
Dark humor. That's
Dark
how I
humor.
live.
Dark stuff is with humor. So, yeah, that is interesting. It's weird. It's unfortunate, but it is cool that they are able to then funnel funding to certain areas that
Right.
probably need it.
Yeah, because like I was saying to Randall when I first discussed it to him, it's not Bad Tom Cruise music movie. What is it?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
Minority
like,
Report. It's not Minority Report. You can't say these people are gonna commit crime. Let's go arrest everybody. You can't do that. So you have to wait for it to happen and then just deal with the fallout of it.
Kaz, this seems well. Okay, listen. You might. I think you have to like rewind about an hour.
Oh, most of this was not serious at all.
To get to the Mortal Kombat stuff. We throw a little curved ball at the end of the stream. We're about to wrap the stream up. You said they say this seems an entirely too serious subject for something with Mortal Kombat in the title.
That's fair.
But you don't know how serious we take Mortal Kombat either, so.
Right.
Wow.
I'm sorry. Just kidding.
Okay. They're right, though. I'm sorry. I pushed it this way. We were going to do a fun story about spider webs and how vibrations and music and blah, blah, blah. You can talk to spiders. But you know what? That seems more serious to me. I don't want to talk to so, All right. Okay. Anything else, guys, before we get out of here?
I'm good.
Okay. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, future podcast listeners. Thanks for listening. If you ever miss a stream, you can always check the replay the following week at grawlixpodcast.com. It's GRAWLIX podcast.com. Or find the Grawlix podcast on all the regular podcast directories. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. So, till then, I guess. Till next week. We'll be back next week, Thursdays, 8 p.m. Central Time. Thanks for watching.
Yep, it was lovely.
Bye.
Don't feed the bear.